Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic.
I think I've
And of course,
referred in the past to the fact that I keep a gratitude journal day by day for the last 6, 7 years. And when I opened it up yesterday, I realized that yesterday was the fifth anniversary of our very, very first show. So happy
yes,
anniversary, Success Showcase. Here we go.
happy anniversary. Yeah, it's been an interesting 5 years. We've had some fantastic topics, some fantastic guests, and hopefully we'll keep it going.
Absolutely. Seems like just yesterday. Time flies when you're growing old.
It does. All right, so speaking of topics, this past week, of course, if anybody who's watched the news saw we lost one of the great military leaders of our time, Colin Powell. And more than just a military leader, I mean, he was one of the first African American generals. He was the first African American Secretary of State. He broke a lot of barriers, and he had 13 laws of leadership that he came up with and followed. And these are laws that are great for anybody. So we're going to go through these, and sort of a tribute to him and what he contributed to leadership. And we're going to go through the 13 laws, discuss them, and hopefully our listeners can adopt these.
Yeah, I mean, I love how the article of this starts, and it says leadership is the art of accomplishing more than the science of management says is possible. I'll read that again. Leadership is the art of accomplishing more than the science of management says is possible. And that's what these rules are all about.
It is, and even though that's not one of the rules, that's a very important lesson for our listeners to hear, that management is not leadership. There is a difference between the two, and a lot of people forget that.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about obviously getting everybody involved and working with the team as opposed to just the top-down approach. And that's exactly what he's talking about here.
Exactly. And his first law, and I love the way he phrased this, is it ain't as bad as you think it is. It will look better in the morning.
Yeah, it says leaving the office at night with a winning attitude affects more than you alone. It conveys that attitude to all of your followers. So,
and that's also, we've talked a lot about this, but that rule leads into how you react. When you have that knee jerk reaction and you think it's that bad, you tend to overreact. When you realize things aren't as bad as you think they are, and take a breath before you react, you change the outcome.
Yeah, that's what we talk about oftentimes is, our initial reaction often turns into our response, just knee jerk coming right out of our mouth without even being filtered by our brains. And it's so important to take that pregnant pause and just ask yourself, is it worth it to respond this way? Or is there a better way out? And that's what this is all about.
Absolutely. And it also leads into his second law, which is get mad and then get over it. It's okay to have that initial reaction, to be upset, to be mad, but get over it. Don't linger on that, and don't let that control your reaction.
Yeah, I mean, that continues on and says, instead of letting anger destroy you or get the best of you, use it to make constructive change. We talk about failing your way forward in a lot of different ways. And the bottom line is one failure, you're just one step forward to achieving what you're looking to achieve.
Exactly. And, anger can be a great motivator as long as you're controlling the anger and you're not letting the anger control you.
Absolutely. And then it all goes back to your ego too, because I mean, that's where all these bad habits come from. It's our egos fighting with really our conscience, our inner being is really saying what's right. So number 3 says, avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. Keep your ego in check and know that you can lead from wherever you are.
Yeah, and that's so important. We tend to get invested in projects, but you can't let your job, your project consume your ego. Because if something goes wrong, when your ego is connected to it, you take it personally, like it's an attack on you. And it's not, it's just something that happened that you have to, again, take that step back, think about, and then react.
Yeah, absolutely. And ego, that's just looking at the person in the mirror, forgetting about the team around you. And one of the books that we've discussed a couple of times, which is so important, again, if you haven't read this, buy it, and you should use this every single day. But it's How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And the key word here is just influence. And influence is basically your example, the things that you're doing, rather than just speaking and that kind of thing. So these are just tips as far as handle all these different situations. And most of it means getting the ego out of the way, because you have to do that in order to respond properly.
Exactly. And, unfortunately, I've seen people that didn't let go of their ego and they take things as personal attacks when they can be simple differences of opinion, simple, things that just happen. Circumstances didn't line up right, but because their ego is so invested in what's going on, they take it as a personal attack. And not only is that not good for the people around them and certainly not good for the project, but it's damaging to their own mental health. So, as part of self care, you need to keep that ego in check so that you're not constantly taking everything as a personal attack and, oh my God, how can I deal with this?
Yeah, and obviously, qualities of a wonderful leader is to listen first, to understand what's going on with somebody else, whether you agree or disagree with that other person. You have to respect everybody's opinion. I mean, there's no such thing as a winner to an argument. If you agree to disagree, sometimes that's a fantastic solution to help each other move ahead with both of your respects, intact.
Exactly.
So the next one says, it can be done. Leaders make things happen. If one approach doesn't work, find another.
That's so important. And we talked about this actually with our guest last week when she was talking about her father. You know, he had this vision of an island and went off on different roads, different ways. Certainly wasn't the journey that he envisioned, but he got where he was thinking of going. When you realize that yes, it can be done, it just might not, the journey might not look like the way you thought it did.
Yeah, and a great way to make it happen this way too is to get your team involved with this. I mean, you really have your own mastermind group with the people that you're working with. And if you throw this out to the power of many instead of just what one person's thinking, sometimes magic happens because something's going to come out of somebody that nobody thought of that might be the answer.
Exactly. Don't get bogged down in how you get there. The goal is what matters. And if you keep that goal in mind, you will get there. And the other thing is, it can be done is such a simple message, but it's so important because there's so many naysayers out there that was, oh, that's impossible. Well, you know what? At one point, it was impossible to go to the moon. At one point, it was impossible to put a computer in your pocket. Lots of things were impossible until they were done. So, as long as you believe it can be done, keep going for it.
Yeah, and the next one kind of follows right with this one as far as what you're doing. It says, be careful what you choose. You may get it. Your team will have to live with your choices, so don't rush. And this is where it is important to discuss these things through, not look at all the negatives and everything, but definitely look at the pros and cons and pick the thing that is the best thing for you to do.
Yeah, it's so important to be conscious about what you're choosing. And that also goes back. We were talking last week with the about the oh no, excuse me, had this conversation off the air. Um, the example of when you learn to drive, when you the car goes where you're looking. So you have to be conscious about what you're focusing on. Your career, your business projects, they all follow that same example. You're going to go where you're looking at. So if you're looking at the wrong thing and not focusing on the goal and not focusing consciously about where you want to be going, you're going to go off in all sorts of different directions that you didn't anticipate.
Absolutely. And again, as far as doing your homework on this, the next one says, don't let adverse facts stand in the way of a good decision. Superb leadership is often a matter of superb instinct, and instinct is really important. So when faced with a tough decision, use the time available to gather information that will inform your instinct.
That's so important. And, it is sort of ironic that that is one of Colin Powell's laws, because unfortunately, what so many people remember of him right now is the bad intelligence he was given about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and how he sold it to the UN. But that the key is that was the best information he could gather. He got this information from multiple intelligence sources, and it ended up being wrong. You need to keep looking at the facts. And just because you've gotten some facts, and this is something he talked about a lot in the last several years, you need to keep looking, and you need to be able to say, okay, this new information says the initial information I had was wrong. You need to be able to switch directions and follow the new information and always keep learning and looking for more info.
Yeah, the next step is you can't make someone else's choices. You shouldn't let someone else make yours. While good leaders listen and consider all perspectives, they ultimately make their own decisions. Accept your good decisions, learn from your mistakes. And I think you just talked about that a bit.
Yes. And that's such an important lesson. And we've talked about that on other podcasts. There's no such thing as a defeat unless you give up. As long as you're learning from things that go wrong, you keep moving forward. And I know I often quote an old saying, try, fail, try again, fail better. And it's really, as long as you keep learning, that's what's really important, because every decision you make shapes the person you are, shapes the projects you work on, shapes your business and career. So as long as you accept the consequences of those decisions and learn from the ones that don't go well, you're always improving as a human being.
Right. Not every step is going to be successful, but every step gets you one step closer to a successful conclusion.
Right. Even when things go wrong, if you're learning from them, that's one step closer than you were before you made that decision. Keep learning and keep moving forward. And and that's just so important for people to understand and act upon.
And as far as looking at the things that help you make your decisions, it says the next one says check small things. Followers live in the world of small things. Find ways to get visibility into that world.
Yeah, life is made up of small things. And small things have big effects. So you really do need to understand those things. And it's, the old saying, you're seeing missing the forest for the trees. This is the other. This is, you need to see the trees, but you also need to see the forest. You need to be aware of all of the little things that go into the big picture, because those little things affect people. And, in my book, The Biznetics Way, it's the combination in mindset of the artistic mindset and the architect's mindset. It's seeing that big artistic picture and yet being aware of all the little pieces that need to go into it to make it work.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this is really a logical follow-up to principle number 5 says, be careful what you choose. You may get it. Your team will have to live with your choices. So the key word here is don't rush. So you have to go through these small things because maybe one or two of them are really big things.
Right. And, again, the small things affect the big things. When people are trying to make big changes, broad sweeping things usually fail because they don't take a look at all of the little things they need to make them work. When you take those little steps and one by one, step by step, build into those bigger things, you get better results and you get more lasting results. So yes, it's so important to be aware of those small things.
Absolutely. And once you've reached the right decision, the next one, this is right out of the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Number 9 here says, share credit. People need recognition and a sense of worth as much as they need food and water. And this is all about teamwork.
Yeah, it's so important to realize that you don't really do anything on your own. Even if you're working solo, you're still relying on people that you learned from, different services you're using. Everything you do is part of a team. And it's also not just about other people, but about all of the learning you've done, all of the studying you've done. It takes a long time to become an overnight success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk in the networking world about the networking mindset, people, the consumer mindset of wanting to deal with people that they know, they like, and they trust. It's the same thing with the people that you're working with on your project or with your team and so on and so forth. Part of the ways to get people know, like, and trust you is to share the credit with them, honestly appreciate them for who they are, instead of, again, taking that top down approach. It's so important to just realize and make people realize, yeah, we're equals. I mean, I just happen to be in this position, but I need you as part of the team, and we're not going to be good without you too.
Right. And that recognition is so important. Just the act of recognizing the contributions of people has a huge effect on their morale. And I'm reminded back in 1984, when Apple came out with the first Mac. Back then, very few people opened up their computers. But if you opened up one of the first Macs, you found that on the interior of the case, Steve Jobs had the entire development team sign carve their names into the interior of the case, so that every Mac that was produced, there was a little bit of credit to all of the team members. And
Yeah,
that sort of thing is so important.
oh yeah, I mean, it goes a long way for the credibility of Apple, because you know that it's coming from a team and not one person. So the next one, again, talks about controlling yourself. It says, remain calm, be kind. Few people make sound or sustainable decisions in an atmosphere of chaos. Establish a calm zone while maintaining a sense of urgency. Easier said than done, but
Yes, it's very difficult to remain calm, especially as things fall apart, go wrong. But it also goes back to get angry and get over it. You don't want to be making decisions in an irrational state of mind. So, when something happens, take that breath, take a step back, and then formulate your response, because that's what changes the outcome. And you get a much better outcome when you're thinking logically and calmly, rather than rushing into something going, oh, we have to get something done right now. This has to be dealt with. Usually when you take the effort to calm down and take that step back, you get a much better solution, rather than when you're rushing and it doesn't matter what we do as long as we do something. Well, it's very rare that something good comes out of that mindset.
Yeah, and this goes really right back to rule number one that says it ain't as bad as you think. It will look better in the morning. Leaving the office at night with a winning attitude affects more than you alone. It conveys that attitude to your followers. So again, and a lot of these other things it said, instead of rushing into things, that's what you need to do. And sometimes remaining calm takes a little while. So sometimes it's good to remain calm overnight and come back and look at it again tomorrow.
Yes, it does. And you start to see that a lot of these laws fit together and work together well, because you can take that time to calm down and get more information, as we said in the earlier laws. Get over being angry, get some good information, don't let adverse facts affect you, and come back calm, relaxed, and ready to make a good decision. So they all sort of fit together into this ecosystem of how you react to things, how you face things. And let's face it, as chief, as head of the Joint Chiefs, as Secretary of State, Colin Powell was a man that dealt with some very stressful situations. So the fact that so many of these laws fit together and have to do with what to do when something goes wrong and you're under great stress, this is something he knew a lot about.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously what he did, a lot of bad things could have happened if he didn't remain calm. So
yes.
Number 11, and this comes, we've talked about the book, The E-Myth Revisited, and other things as far as successful businesses, but this talks about having a vision. It says be demanding, but it says followers need to know where their leaders are taking them and for what purpose. And I emphasize that word purpose. To achieve the purpose, set demanding standards and make sure that they are met. But it's really, really important to share your vision with your team and get their buy-in on it. And that's what this is all about. Once they buy in on it, yes, you can be demanding, but again, working as a team, using the principles that we've already talked about, it's so, so important to start with that vision.
Yes, and this law actually brings in a lot of things that we've talked about, because it starts with the vision, but then it goes on to talk about purpose. And we've talked about start with why. If the people on your team understand your why they're doing this, why it's important, goes a long way to helping them be motivated, and it also goes a long way to helping them figure out better ways to accomplish the vision. Because if they understand the why, the how is less important. So it gives them more motivation. They can come up with bigger and better ideas to help the leader, and it helps the team work together. So that vision, focus on that vision. And of course, there's a rule in the military that says no plan survives contact with the enemy. And basically that means the commander's intent has to be known, so that the soldiers on the ground know what the ultimate intent is. And then when circumstances change on the ground, they can adapt and still know what that ultimate goal is and keep that vision in mind. So this is something that, goes back a long time in the military. I'm sure that's, where he came up with that. But in the business world and in your personal life, it works the same way. When you share that vision, share that goal, and share your why, it makes it a lot easier to motivate. It makes it a lot easier to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things to keep in mind, and it's human nature to be like this, but number 12 says, don't take counsel of your fears or your naysayers. Successful organizations are not built by cowards or cynics. And basically, cynicism is really just expressing a fear that you have over and over and over again, but you can't let that dominate.
All right. As you've said so many times, fear is an acronym for false evidence appearing real. You don't want to be depending on your fears for information. You want to be able to take that step back, remain calm, and take counsel with people who have done what you're trying to do, people that believe it can be done. There's always naysayers out there. There's always going to be, oh, that can't be done. And when somebody tells you something can't be done, what they're really saying is they can't do it. So why would you take their advice?
Absolutely. And I mean, in other words, we talk about turning yes buts into yes ands. I talk
Yes.
about turning obstacles into opportunities. This number 12, the fears of the naysayers are the obstacles, but number 13 talks about perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. If you believe and have prepared your followers will believe. This is all about looking for and finding that opportunity.
Absolutely. It's about getting everybody on the same page, getting them to accept that, yes, they're going to succeed. It's not just about belief in the leader, it's about everybody on the team believing in themselves and having that belief push them forward. And also having each person on the team believe in the other members of the team. And that's where that force multiplier comes in. Because when you have a group of people that all believe they can succeed, that all trust each other and say, yes, we can do this together.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things that's amazing to watch, where the sum of the parts is greater than, the result is greater than the sum of its parts.
Absolutely. I mean, optimism, it's contagious. It's more contagious than any bad virus out there. And it calls it the force multiplier. And 1 + 1 is 4, 4 + 4 is 10, and so on and so forth. It's the power of everybody working together. And I'm sure that everybody out there has been from time to time in an instance where when you have a whole bunch of positivity going on with ideas, all of a sudden the room is just filled with an aura that you don't see too often. And that's something to strive for.
It really is. And, all 13 of these laws, we've taken them one by one, but you've seen how they fit together. And that's really, when you use all 13 of these laws, you're really getting a result that's greater than the sum of its parts, because they build on each other and give you more opportunity. So we're just about at the end of our time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big lesson from all of this?
Well, at the end of this, it summarizes Colin Powell's rules are short but powerful. Use them as a reminder to manage your emotions, model the behavior you want from others, and lead your team through adversity. And I couldn't put that any better. And really, all you have to do is go to Google and just Google Colin Powell's 13 Rules for Leadership, and you can download this script that we just went through. And I highly recommend that you do that, because, again, this, along with How to Win Friends and Influence People, are two powerful tools to help you do the best at whatever you want to do.
Yeah, it really is so important. And these laws propelled him to the successes he had, prepared him for the failures he had, and he always accepted those failures, learned from them, And that's something that, he actually didn't have in these 13 laws, but that he was known for was accepting responsibility when something went wrong. So, yes, it's great leadership lessons from a great leader. And I recommend everybody go to Google, take a look at these 13 laws, and see what you can learn from them. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also catch us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our sister podcasts on the rest of the Xvadio network. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.